That didn't address the fundamental issue that it wouldn't be seen to be legitimate in the eyes of the British public. And if it didn't seem to be legitimate, frankly, we would end up probably back having an election come the autumn.
The fundamental issue was Gordon Brown. He had to go.
Well, the fundamental thing was that the Labour Party had lost the election.
He had to go.
And that therefore it would not be easy for the British public to understand why a Prime Minister who had lost the election ended up being the Prime Minister again.
Now, Gordon's reaction to that was perfectly calm. He's a grown-up, perfectly realistic. He said, we need to think about that. We'll think about it. We'll come back to it.
How did he react?
Well, it was a difficult thing for me to say. I mean, you don't say something like that with any sort of relish. With hindsight, I slightly regret that I didn't say that to him just in person, and I did later say that to him, because he's a proud man, and I think, I saw immediately it would have been easier for me to have said that to him one-on-one rather than have it with other people in the room.
Clegg and Mandelson debated Gordon Brown's future in front of him. Mandelson arguing that only Brown could deliver a coalition deal, but Clegg insisting he had to be gone by October.
Gordon wanted more latitude, more space, and that, I think, created the impression or suggestion to the Liberal Democrats that actually perhaps he was angling to stay on not only for longer, but possibly even indefinitely, and that worried them.
Senior Liberal Democrats were being entertained at Paddy Ashdown's home that night. Many were still trying to oil the wheels of a deal with Labour. But a late-night phone call from a Clegg ally revealed what had just gone wrong.
About 2 o'clock in the morning, phone rang. David Laws said, look, it's a bit of a disaster. Gordon has reneged on the undertaking he gave earlier. Best he will do is say that he will go sometime in the next Parliament. Just think for a moment of the personal chemistry of this. You have wanted to be in Downing Street all your life. You've just fought an election which you've lost. And then the door bursts open and in comes young Lochinvar, who has outmatched you in the televised debates. He is the future, you are the past. I think for almost anybody, let alone somebody with those unique and not always lovable personal characteristics of Gordon when it comes to relations with other people, that would be a difficult thing to handle.
Early the next morning, Vince Cable had an unexpected wake-up call.
I'm not an early riser myself, it's certainly not 6 o'clock in the morning. I struggled to get my wits together very quickly when I realised the Prime Minister was on the line.
Cable had been a surprise and occasional visitor to Downing Street in the months before the election. There'd even been hints of offering him a government job.
He felt very strongly that we were perhaps making a mistake. He thought we should be aligning ourselves with him, and I had to make the case to him as best I could at half awake, was that the arithmetic didn't work. And that it would be very difficult to work with him as party leader. So it wasn't done in any sense of personal acrimony, but just spelling out the facts of life.
Here comes the Prime Minister. Let's hear what he's got to say.
The reason that we have a hung parliament is that no single party and no single leader was able to win the full support of the country. As leader of my party, I must accept that that is a judgment on me. I therefore intend to ask the Labour Party to set in train the processes needed for its own leadership election.
Gordon Brown had resigned to remove himself as an obstacle to a coalition deal. When Nick Clegg was told the news, he reacted in a way which made some believe that a deal with Labour was what he really wanted.
Prime Minister was on the phone to Nick Clegg. Loads of other people, myself, Peter, picked up phones to listen. And Nick Clegg said, in terms, he said that, of course we should proceed on this basis. Of course Labour and the Liberal Democrats should seek to reach an agreement. We are, after all, the two progressive parties of British politics. And if, and I'm clear, if my party sees me reach an agreement with the Conservatives, he said, I'm going to have my members leaving in droves. So that is why we must make this work.
Labour were back in the game.
What an extraordinary day. It's all changed just in the last hour.
It's an audacious bid by Gordon Brown to keep Labour in power. With the Gordon Brown issue resolved, two of his closest advisers took to the airwaves to sell the idea of a Lab-Lib coalition.
On the Monday evening, I believed there was all to play for and that there was a very good prospect of a Labour-Lib Dem coalition being negotiated.
David Cameron stopped a meeting of his shadow cabinet to watch Gordon Brown resign. The Tory leadership had spent 13 long years in opposition and now feared that the wilderness years might not end. What they realised is that they had to up their offer. They had to convince the Lib Dems to join them, not Labour, in coalition. The price they would have to pay was electoral reform.
I knew that for the Liberal Democrats to form a coalition government, they had to get something on electoral reform. It is one of their #1 priorities. And I was concerned that the shadow cabinet, and indeed the parliamentary party of the Conservatives, would not be able to accept that.
David Cameron summoned his MPs to a meeting in Committee Room 14 of the Commons. He needed their backing for something he knew they didn't want to give.
What Tory MPs heard that night has left a long legacy of mistrust. He told them that Gordon Brown had offered Nick Clegg not just a coalition government, but a change in the voting system without the need for a referendum. Therefore, they had no choice, he said. A referendum was the minimum price for the Conservatives to get back into government. There was just one problem with it. It turns out it wasn't true. Didn't you mislead your MPs then by saying Labour will give them voting reform without a referendum?
No, because I was absolutely certain in my own mind that was the case. And I had, I think, good reason to be certain. I had a number of people had told me what they thought was going on, and conversations that were taking place about AV without a referendum. And also I'd had a conversation with Nick when I'd argued very vigorously that you couldn't do alternative vote without a referendum. It would be wrong.
If Conservative MPs think they've been misled into backing a referendum because you told David Cameron, look, we can get this change without one, you're saying that's wrong?
To be fair, I think that's not, in a sense, what the kind of perception. The perception, which I think is accurate, was that there was discussions around, and it might have been an offer that might have been made and might have been considered. In answer to your direct question, was it ever formally made to me? No, it was not formally made to me.
For the Tory leadership, the offer was the last throw of the dice.
That was the deal maker or the deal breaker, and our party understood that when we put it to them, and I therefore went out and made the offer of a referendum. We will offer to the Liberal Democrats in a coalition government the holding of a referendum on the alternative vote system. Okay, thank you very much indeed.
David Cameron had bounced his party into backing a referendum, but he returned home that night fearing it still wouldn't be enough.
I remember going home, I think, on Monday evening, and I think Sam and I had supper in the kitchen, and I remember saying to her, you know, it's not going to happen. I'm going to be leader of the opposition, and I remember saying, I want to go on being leader of the opposition. I think we can defeat this new government. I'm depressed that it hasn't worked out as we wanted, but we behaved in the right way. We made them a big, generous offer to have a coalition government. They're going with the other lot. We're going to fight them all the way, and I thought, that's it. I'm going to be in opposition for a couple more years.
If Labour were to keep the keys to number 10, they now needed to hammer out a coalition agreement of their own. Gordon Brown sent a team of 5 negotiators into talks. The first time Labour had met the Lib Dems, little had been achieved. This time had to be different.
Within less than half an hour, I was getting text messages from Paddy Ashdown and Charles Kennedy saying it's not going very well. And I'm thinking, well, that's a bit odd because they're not there and I'm not there. And they were obviously somebody was emailing them or texting them from inside the meeting.
something clearly wasn't working.
Those discussions on Monday were pretty hideous from our perspective.
In the Monday meeting, they were far more antagonistic, a bit dismissive, a bit arrogant.
And there was a feeling, I thought, of both arrogance and resentment on the part of some of the team.
I think we were taken aback by how they sort of arrogantly thought they were the demanders.
A surprise demand from the Lib Dems came over the question of spending cuts. Just days before, Clegg and his party had been telling voters that cuts now would damage the recovery. They did an abrupt U-turn and asked Labour to agree to immediate spending cuts.
I was astonished, if I'm honest, because you know, it didn't occur to me that they would think for a moment they could hold their party together on such a sort of massive breach of the manifesto.
Did you change your mind about cuts this year in this 5 days?
No, I changed my mind earlier than that. Firstly, remember, between March and the actual general election, a financial earthquake, you know, occurred on our European doorstep.
But forgive me, in the election you didn't say, things have changed, I'm in favour of cuts now.
To be fair, we were all, I think, reacting to very, very fast-moving economic events.
We were in this discussion, we went in thinking we'd done the work, proper conversation. They were quite hostile and aggressive about it. We came out and thinking, well, that's not serious, that's not going to work.
It was a good discussion, it was positive, it was constructive, and we'll talk again in the morning. This is obviously very important, and important to get it right.
At the end of another extraordinarily long day, Nick Clegg met his party again. They decided to reject any deal short of a coalition.
Well, we're just going into another meeting.
Are you leaning now more towards Labour, do you think?
We'll try and make everything as clear as possible, as soon as possible. Watch it, watch the step.
The uncomfortable choice they now faced was whether to join a Labour-led or a Tory-led government.
It was an emotionally very sort of turbulent time, and as somebody who'd spent all my political life fighting the Conservatives, it was quite difficult to face the fact that we might be working with them in a coalition arrangement.
Many assumed that Cable was opposed to a Tory deal, so his words that night were crucial.
My heart was pulling one way and my head was pulling another, and I think we were all torn in that kind of way. But the point I made to them was that the decision you have to make has to be the right one for the country and the party.
Did you ever think it might be right for the party, but I can't be part of it?
Yes, I certainly did reflect on my own role in it.
By the small hours, the waiting journalists were being driven to distraction by the lack of news and sleep.
Is it AV or PR? Which way are you inclined to go, Labour or Tory? Anyone think of any other questions? Because I can't. Deal or no deal? Left or right? Red or blue?
By day 5, everyone thinks a deal is close, but no one seems sure which one.
Can you trust the Liberal Democrats? I mean, you know, they're behaving like every harlot.
We are on a knife edge, as one senior Liberal Democrat
as they discuss whether to form a government with the Conservatives or Labour.
So it is now, I believe, decision time for the Liberal Democrats, and I hope they make the right decision that will give this country the strong, stable government that it badly needs, and it badly needs quickly.
But coalition agreements between rival parties aren't easy to make quickly. The changing of the political guard can take many weeks in other countries, as detailed policy agreements need to be hammered out and then approved by each party. But here on day 5, people were reaching the end of their tether.
If you had to design the worst possible context for conducting the formation of a government, the context in which we do it in Britain would be it.